going to be very brief here and say this whole situation is on me. I feel terrible for Jerod because I put him in an untenable situation. I know that he has all the tools as a head coach to be successful in this league. He just needed more time before taking the job. In the end, I'm a fan of this team first, and now I have to go out and find a coach who can get us back to the playoffs and hopefully championships.
All right, everybody, welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk Podcast. Ramifications of a 4-13 season in Foxborough, the 4th overall pick, and a new head coach will be coming in. Before we get into what I think is the most germane topic going forward, and that's how you marry up the next head coach with a personnel department that's going to be intact, what were your impressions today of Robert Kraft's time in front of the media, Phil? I mean, he just came right out. I thought that was a perfect way to start it. This is on me. It was untenable. I put him in a bad situation. Own it, own it, own it.
Accountability, I thought that stands at the top for me in terms of what we saw from him. It's what he should have done. It's something that I basically asked for. There was a point in time a week ago or so where there was a lot of letters being written by different people in the media, to the Krafts, as though they were the Krafts, trying to talk to the fans. And what I said was, this is not a time for letters. And I know they put one out last night, but this is a time to wear your heart on your sleeve, speak emotionally, speak passionately to the fan base, lay out a clear direction. And I think he did that. And it was interesting, Tom, too, he does not ever want to separate himself from the emotional part of his role as owner of the Patriots. I asked him, how much does fan reaction push you on something like this? And he goes, well, I'm the biggest fan. And I know a lot of that is cliche, but I think there are owners and people in positions of power who would say, no, I made a cold, calculating decision, and these are the reasons why. And to me, Robert Kraft is essentially acknowledging that that's not what he does when he's hiring people or firing people. And so I found that to be interesting too, and I just think his overall demeanor, I thought he was concise when he should have been, and he had energy. Good for him in his 80s.
Yeah, 82 years old, and I honestly was concerned because sometimes extemporaneously when we have him at the owners' meetings or, at the Super Bowl on occasion, and it happens with me too, as you can see in this podcast, I start to go off on a small tangent. And it's no big deal here on a podcast, but you can step on a landmine. I don't think he stepped on any landmines. There are eye-widening decisions that the team seems to be on the path to making with the personnel department that we're going to vet a little bit more. But just I think what was interesting to me was the urgency with which the decision to move on from Mayo was so stark that it does first announce that the team is taking very seriously the fact that they are now out in the wilderness, have been for 5 years. There's no lights, no candles, no stars. There is no North Star.
No breadcrumbs?
No breadcrumbs, no nothing. Just howling wolves in the form of media. And they're acknowledging that by trying to find, okay, we're gonna get out of this. But that urgency, to me, is somewhat trumped by the notion that the personnel group, who staffed what we all acknowledge was the worst roster, or one of, in the league, who had been, in the form of Eliot Wolf and Matt Groh and others in the scouting department, part of this organization prior to Jerod Mayo being involved. All the player acquisition that's gone on, whether it's free agency or draft, hasn't been good enough. So why, when we asked Robert Kraft about the personnel department, did we get these responses?
Robert, aside from yourself and Jonathan, who will be involved in the head coaching interviews, and what traits are you looking for?
Well, we'll have Alonzo Highsmith and Eliot will be involved, and we're going to try to understand who can help us best get back to the playoffs.
Does that mean Eliot and his staff are going to continue on, or will the coaching hire also impact your front office?
We are looking for people working together, and they will be staying on.
The personnel department this past year in free agency didn't really have a banner year, and also in the draft. And Eliot and some of the other individuals there, Matt Crow, have been part of the personnel department for a number of years. What is it that stands out to you about them that they should continue forward in the team building when the roster is not great?
Yeah, I think that the department evolved a lot, and a lot of things were changed. We changed our grading system this year and have done things. Our drafts have not been good for a while, and that's not, if you want to compete long term and be good in this league, you got to have good drafts, because those rookie contracts allow you to go out and get the people you need to surround people. Looks like we lucked out. We maybe have 2 quarterbacks.
So as I reported earlier on Monday morning, I said you should anticipate the personnel department staying intact for the year. Robert Kraft buttressed that claim hours later. They're going to be around. It's head-scratching. The team has a massive amount of salary cap space. It's got the 4th overall pick in the draft, which means a whole bunch of different options. They haven't done well at wide receiver. They miscalculated how well they had staffed the offensive line. And honestly, Phil, from things that you have said, and I'll let you say them, I don't think the relationship between personnel and coaching staff was great. I think that the personnel department really had its way in kind of saying, it's not on us. And they always are going to have a closer pipeline to ownership than coaching.
Do you think that was the case here? Even given how close that relationship was between Robert Kraft and Jerod Mayo?
I do. I just think there's much more ample opportunity for people wearing suits rather than people wearing whistles to say, killing us. This guy's not supposed to be like that. He was supposed to develop more. I mean, look at Eliot Wolf's statement to Henry McKenna in the
Fox Sports.
Thank you.
Yep, you got it.
Well, I was thinking Forbes. And Henry doesn't work for Forbes or the Wall Street Journal. Just to basically say we anticipated more development. That is right in front of the A train. It's kind of unacceptable.
Yeah.
And the fact that personnel has been absent all year long from answering for the poop sandwich they laid in front of fans and the disarray that they laid in front of fans, both at the wide receiver position and along the offensive line, is, to me, cowardice is strong. I said that yesterday, but weaselly fits. So what do you think's going to happen here? From my understanding, the personnel folks will get another year with their system.
So,
and be intact. This ain't. Sorry, excuse me. I want to hear from you. I swear to God.
Yeah.
But the perception that I got from conversations were that they deserve to have another year, especially with what Robert's pointing out, grading system, all that stuff. Phil, you.
A couple of things. Number one, I would say there did feel like a disconnect between the personnel department and the coaching staff, and that commentary to Henry McKenna, I think, can be viewed as a bit of a smoking gun, just as to the attitudes that have been in place, were in place at the end of the 2024-2025 season. I did speak to a couple of front office personnel on Sunday, and the indications I were given was that they were anticipating coming back for a second year. And so I don't know how many assurances or what types of assurances they had been given, but that was their expectation as of Sunday, before the official announcement that Jerod Mayo had been fired. What I find interesting about Robert Kraft's press conference is there is a little bit of wiggle room to what he said in terms of the roles for the people that are here. He said that Eliot Wolf, Alonzo Highsmith, and others will be back
And we'll be part of the search process,
and we'll be
too.
a part of the head coaching
That's eye-opening.
search process.
So I just want to hit you on that is
Yeah.
that's really the crux of the issue. If Eliot Wolf is staying in place and his personnel group is staying in place, is that going to be dissuading for whatever candidates coming in here to say, oh, shit, now I'm going to work with Eliot Wolf, and he's not doing a good job. If Curran can see it and Phil can see it, I sure as hell can see it.
So my understanding is no. It would not encourage a strong head coaching candidate to move off because ownership will be malleable when it comes to this situation.
Meaning they'll...
Insofar as, if a head coach, say it's Mike Vrabel, can we just use the name? We know he's the favorite.
So Vrabel comes in. He already had a shitty relationship with the successor put in place after John Robinson in Tennessee. His guy didn't get the job. Rand Carthen did. They didn't see eye to eye. Vrabel gets chased out of town. So now Vrabel's going to come in here with somebody who's cozied up to the ownership already and say, oh, great, now I'm going to work with Eliot Wolf. Why would I do that?
And Eliot Wolf has survived 2 head coach firings. And if you're Mike Vrabel and you're coming in, I could see why you might not be thrilled by that.
Also came out pretty intact from the Cleveland debacle.
My understanding is if somebody like Mike Vrabel, if Mike Vrabel were to get this job and he goes to the Krafts and says, I understand you want to keep Eliot and Alonzo and maybe a few other guys here in the front office. I need this guy to be running the personnel department. That's really what I need. And if I'm going to do this job, he needs to be there. Whether it's Ryan Cowden or Mike Borgonzi or anybody else. These are guys that have been thrown around in terms of potential general manager discussions when Mike Vrabel's name comes up. And I think ownership would be open to that. And I think Eliot Wolf would be open to taking a different kind of role where he does not have final say on the roster. I could see all of that happening. And so somebody would essentially be coming in over the top of Wolf and everybody else in the front office, and you move forward that way. That way Mike Vrabel gets his guy, ownership has Eliot Wolf and others if they want to keep those people around, and maybe that's a tenable situation.
Go back to the stuff we've been talking about with the triangle of authority, and I've revisited 1997 when Pete Carroll came in. They had a triangle of authority. There was no clear leader. Bill Parcells left because he got trumped by a triangle of authority in the scouting staff. And then it was Bill here for 25 years. The buck stopped with him, and he made it very clear that that's how it was going to be. And I wonder if this is the same replay of what we saw in 1997, and in 2000, just on an accelerated timeline. Mayo comes in for a year. It's incredibly disorganized, as it was with Pete. He wasn't ready. Pete, again, was not, even after he had already had a stint with the Jets for 1 year. He was a one-and-done guy. Pete Carroll was. And the Kraft said, you know what? Okay, we tried it. We tried it with somebody who would be more amenable and easier to get along with. We need to have, I hate the word alpha. It's so overused. We need to have an alpha. We need to have a point of the spear. And we're going to make it Mike Vrabel. I would not, for instance, they're going to interview Ben Johnson. I would not make a first-year head coach the end of the person with whom the buck stops. I just don't. That's why I think Vrabel is the perfect candidate. He knows what he wants. He knows where landmines are. He relates well to the media. And I think that if you're going closer to a one-voice organization, Vrabel would fit perfectly. So the point I'm trying to make is I was told that, look, Eliot's not the GM. He leads personnel, but he's not a general manager. And the buck was stopping with him, and at least Wolf saying so at the owners' meetings, by default to a degree. I mean, almost.
The whole hiring process was strange last year.
Who could tell where the friggin'
They didn't
buck
have
stopped?
anybody with the title, obviously, and Eliot had not yet been given the title that he eventually had
And
until after the draft, I believe.
Yeah, May. So it would be not a GM. He's not the GM, so he would not be over whoever comes in. That person would be over personnel, it seems, especially if it were Vrabel. And then personnel would be giving guidance. I just don't like the recipe of Mike or Ben Johnson's personnel guy coming in and then getting along great with a personnel group who already was knifing this coaching staff.
Doesn't it feel like that's what it's sort of set up
Yar.
to be?
Yar.
I mean, just based on ownership's commentary and understanding that they would like these guys around, not necessarily saying that they're going to be running the personnel department, but they're going to be back in some capacity, whether it's Mike Vrabel who's picking the players and Eliot Wolf's just, working under him and doing the legwork on all the scouting, or if it's Mike Vrabel's GM who comes in and he's over the top of Eliot and Eliot's there with others that came in with him and worked for him, and now they're working for this other guy that's come in over the top. It seems strange. And I don't have enough experience, Tom, to be able to tell you league-wide this is unusual. It feels unusual to me.
It feels like another half measure. And who's going to go through this? Just reported within the hour here in the afternoon of Monday. The Jaguars are going to keep Trent Baalke on. Trent Baalke has been, and I don't know him from Adam, never spoken to him, but I just know he's one of those survivor types. Mm-hmm. No matter what happens, no matter how much poop comes flying off the fan, he survives. And Eliot Wolf feels like he's got that survivor gene in him.
Why do you think that is? Do you think that's because ownership just really thinks he's a smart guy? Is it because his personality is, I used the word malleable earlier, his personality is such that, hey, if you want me to run the show, I could run the show, but if I have to be number 2, I'm under contract here. I'm not technically the general manager. I knew that when I signed my contract. I'll be number 2. He's just Mr. Go Along to get along, and so the Krafts really like him, and they would really like to keep him on because of that.
I don't know the guy well enough. It seems that people think he's extremely smart. I find little tidbits about him interesting. For instance, when The Athletic did its poll of agents asking about organizations and who they worked well with, agents responded that Eliot Wolf was like the easiest negotiator or most pleasant person to work with. So is he easy to work of all, and he wasn't even really the GM at the time. So that's John Schneider, that's Ryan Poles, that's you name it, Trent Baalke, John Lynch, whoever. This guy, Eliot Wolf, who wasn't even a GM at the time, was someone that agents felt comfortable dealing with. So that leads me to believe that he might be somebody who deals well behind the scenes with people and is an amenable, easy to get along with guy, which is terrific. I would love to move into a house next to a guy like that, because I don't have a 9/16 ratchet and I need it. Oh, yeah, I can actually do it. But I don't want him picking my friggin' players if he can't tell a Jalen Polk and a Javon Baker or Jacoby Myers from a friggin' Juju Smith-Schuster. Don't tell me Chuksa Okorafor can play left tackle, and then he's on the first train back to friggin' Pittsburgh by September 12th. That's what matters. And he does seem intelligent because, you know what? The Krafts like big brains. They really like organization. That's why Pete's not coaching here for 30 years. And that's why Jerod Mayo didn't make it 365 days. They like organization. They like plans. They like structure. Bill gave them that. They thought it was awesome. Then they didn't get to see what he was doing anymore because he covered his work. But I think that's probably a big part of it. Plus, I think the Krafts freaking hate change. They loathe change.
But you're welcoming it on by firing your head coach. And there were arguments to...
Yeah, but if it's going to be Mike Vrabel, how much change is there?
Significant, no?
Right, but it's not like Ben Johnson or Bobby Slowick.
Well, I think...
Because
honestly,
of who you are.
Because of the organization and the personality,
yeah,
I think he's going to have a very different personality than Mayo. I know he's a former player. I know he's had the experience here, but...
I guess there's a tradition that they want, that they are addicted to, which I don't blame them, at least reliant on.
Yeah.
That they want to keep that tie to.
But I think if I'm a Patriots fan, I'm hoping that the Krafts would be interested in Vrabel because of what he represents, completely aside from his history here in New England as a player. That, to me, I know it's going to be a factor. It's the reason they have a relationship with the guy. It's one of the primary reasons why he's their top candidate. If I'm a Patriots fan, I don't want that stuff to matter because I care about how is the guy going to coach the football team. Mm-hmm. And there are people out there, I'm sure, who are already in love with the idea of him as the head coach because they saw him with the Titans and they saw him use Bill Belichick's tricks with the clock and the penalties and the, how to manage in game and the decision-making in real time that was impressive at times and helped him earn Coach of the Year in 2021. Like, that's why you should want him. It shouldn't be about the red jacket.
No.
And the Super Bowl rings.
No.
So that lends insight for them into his personality and how much he cares about the game and how he'll interact with others, I'm sure. But this should be more about the merits that he possesses as a head coach. And I just for me to kind of put a bow on it, the personnel situation shouldn't be so important to ownership, and keeping these guys shouldn't be so important to ownership that it would in any way prevent Vrabel or someone else from wanting to come to New England, or B, impact their ability to do their job to the highest level once they get here. If either of those things, if there's a whiff of a chance of either of those things happening, they have to be willing to move off of the people that they have in the front office right now and start fresh, because that's how most of the league does it. And I know they probably think most of the league is dumb. But you got to sort of do business as business is being done, I think, at times.
Yeah. I mean, who's your priority here? Eliot Wolf and his feelings and his almighty grading system? I mean, part of me wonders if the Krafts are just being shown a typewriter and going, oh, my God, I've never seen it. Or a computer back in 1980. We haven't seen a grading system before. Bill never let us see this. Wow. They've never seen this
really
level
probably
of
not
advancement.
that revolutionary.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's something that
we
just
can't
about
lose
every
this.
other team in the league does. Again, there's a reason why things are done usually a certain way.
There's another aspect to this I want to get into, and it's self-evident in a lot of ways, but it's worth exploring as well today. And we're going to be in this all week, folks, so you'll get more pods and information, and, of course, on all our shows and on Next Pats. But just why Jerod Mayo is not the head coach anymore. And here's Robert Kraft talking about, when asked by Chris Gasper, hey, if you knew they were going to suck and they went out and sucked, why isn't he getting another year? Because you knew it was going to take some time.
Yeah, from my point of view, I just thought we had a rough year last year. It was not 24, 23. And going through 2 years like that, and then seeing where we were this year, and especially the second half of the year, just made me feel we weren't going in the right direction. And I don't want to go through this next year, and we're going to do what we got to do to fix it.
I really think that it was self-evident as to why Jerod's not here. It's not the record. It's not the number of wins. It is the second half of the season, as he said, that they weren't going in the right direction, especially the last quarter of the season not going in the right direction. I thought it was listless at times. Communication was bad at times. The messaging was not good. The performance was embarrassing, especially when you could have lost 15-0 to the Chargers in the second to last game of the season. So I'm not surprised he's fired. I am only surprised that they acted with such swiftness and mercilessness, but also there was a level of mercy to the quick move. Phil?
There was. And Robert Kraft pointed that out early in his press conference. He said something along the lines of, we move fast. Well, since when? I mean, they really don't. They haven't. And I think that's in some ways been a strength of theirs. Hey, measure 9 times, cut once. He also said that during his press conference. But in this instance, with specifically Mike Vrabel available, and we'll continue to bring that name up until he gets hired, and that's my expectation, is that he'll be the next Patriots head coach. I'm not reporting that anything's done, and I know you've said the same thing. It's too early to say anything like that.
Too early.
They're going to go through this process.
And a lot of things can happen. The things that we're talking about right now, I got to hit it 4:01. It's 3:58.
You should go.
Yeah, I know.
Where is it?
Right out here. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to
Do you want
pause.
me to go?
No, I'll go. No, I'm all right.
All right.
But I'm going to hang up. Why don't you button this up? Button up this podcast. I'm going to go out there and get my thing done.
All right.
Bye.
I like how we're just going to include all of this. Hopefully in the video you can see Tom's new sneakers. Those things are delicious. Ice creams. Damn, Daniel. Where did we even end that? These are the types of things that happen on this podcast. You really got to be able to think on your feet here. And I'm going to be honest, with not a lot of sleep last night, Sunday night, coming into the podcast today, getting ready for the breakdown with Ted Johnson, I'm not real quick on my feet at the moment. this is going to move fast. And the expectation, I know, for both Tom and I, if we had to rank it, we would say Mike Vrabel's going to be the next guy. But that hasn't happened yet. It's too early to say that it is definitely going to happen. I know Tom thinks things could happen and things could change, and that is certainly the case. That happens this time of year. It was around this time last year where the Washington Commanders thought they had Ben Johnson as their next head coach, as a recent example of how things are weird. You know, we can go back 20 plus years and talk about Bill Belichick with the Jets and being head coach there for a day before resigning. So odd stuff happens this time of year. So let's acknowledge that. Let's acknowledge that we should, to some degree, expect the unexpected. But I am expecting that Mike Vrabel will have a very, very good chance once he interviews that he'll be at the top of the board for the Krafts if he's not already. And I think he is already. But getting back to that Robert Kraft comment about moving fast, that name is the reason why. Mike Vrabel's already done an interview with your division rival. And I've been told, I've reported it here and elsewhere over the course of the last several days. People who know Mike Vrabel saw the fact that he got out of his Cleveland contract, which was not the initial design of that contract, but that he got out of it before the end of the regular season so that he could start interviewing early, and then went and interviewed for the Patriots' hated rival a few hundred miles south. That was a calculated decision, is how it was described to me. And so, does he have some interest in the Jets job? I'm sure he does. Does he have real interest in the Patriots job, and he knows what kind of message that would send to his friends, the Krafts, by going and interviewing for the Jets job before the season was even over? Of course he does. Of course he understands what kind of message that would be, and the sentiment involved there would be, hey, better act fast, and the Krafts are. And so we give him credit for that, and so by the time we podcast next, there may be a new head coach of the New England Patriots. And maybe we'll even have a good idea of who would be coming with that new head coach to help run the personnel department. Or maybe we'll find out that it's still Eliot Wolf in the top chair, but it's actually the head coach who's going to be making the personnel decisions. It's just going to be Eliot Wolf and his staff that are going to be nudging that person along and providing guidance, to use the word that Tom used a little bit earlier. Lots of moving parts, still a very fluid situation. Let's remind people that as we sit here today, Monday, January 6th, 4:02 p.m., no other coaches have been fired. Not Alex Van Pelt, not DeMarcus Covington, no one else on the staff. The way this will probably work is that for those people who are under contract, some coaches aren't under contract after the season, by the way, but for the ones that are, they'll probably be given the opportunity to interview for their jobs or other jobs beneath the new head coach, whoever comes aboard, and in all likelihood, they won't get chosen because that's just the way the world works in the NFL. Whether it's Mike Vrabel or anybody else, they're going to have a really good idea as to who they'd like to be their offensive coordinator. Josh McDaniels, Tommy Rees, who's the tight ends coach in Cleveland that Vrabel just spent a year with. Rees was also Alabama offensive coordinator, Notre Dame offensive coordinator. Defensive coaches, Vrabel obviously is well connected on that side of the ball across the NFL, and so would have all kinds of options there. So in all likelihood, a lot of these coaches here in New England that haven't yet been fired, if not all of them, will be gone. And that's unfortunate. You never root for anybody to lose their job. But that's just sort of how the sausage gets made. That's why there's a delay right now. You're not just going to officially wipe all those people out. You're going to hire a new head coach, and you're going to let the process take place from there. So we'll keep you updated as the process continues at head coach in the front office, whether it's here on the Patriots Talk Podcast, whether it's on the Next Pats Podcast, whether it's on Early Edition Boston Sports Tonight, NBC 10. We're doing all sorts of hits for NBC 10 as we're keeping everybody as updated as humanly possible during this tumultuous time for the New England Patriots. But we're going to do our best to keep you guys looped in on everything you need to know. So keep it locked right here. Patriots Talk Podcast, Next Pats Podcast. We'll talk to you very soon.